Alright, so now that we can actually get a match percentage of some kind, we want to actually store that percentage into the database. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to create a new app called Matches that will actually store all this stuff, and we're actually going to move this matching.py into a file called utilities because this is really a utility type function. It doesn't need to have its own file called matching. Instead, we'll have a file called utilities that will have multiple utility type functions like this that will run inside of it, or at least live inside of it. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create this new app. So I'll do python manage.py start app, and we're going to call it matches. And as we see, the matches app comes inside of our source file here. So I'm going to make a new file inside of this. I'm going to call it utils.py. And we're just going to copy all of matching.py and put it into utils.py. And then notice that I have question models being imported, so that actually works out very well for us because we've moved this matching algorithm now. So inside of questions, I'm actually going to delete this matching file because we no longer need it, because it's actually going to exist in utils. Okay, cool. So now that we've got that, there's a few things that we can do within here. Is first of all, I'm going to get rid of or comment out all of the stuff that we actually don't use in the matching function itself, because we will actually end up getting rid of those things, but that will be long after we actually improve upon this matching function too. But for now, we're going to go into our models, and we're going to create a new model, and I'll call it class match, and it's going to be models.model. And we want to think about how we're going to do this. First of all, whenever any match happens, it's going to be between two users, so user A and user B. And then we want to get the match like percentage or the match decimal. Right? So like if we think back to our utility function, it's returning back the percentage. And then we're also getting the number of questions, like the number of questions in common. So we could put questions answered. So the number of questions, which will be an integer. And then we also want to get maybe the timestamp, so when it was added into the database, and then also an updated timestamp, so when it was most recently updated. So this might be all we need for now. So we've got the match decimal, questions answered, and really, I mean, if we go any further than this, we might get a little too complicated on this match. We might need to add stuff to it later, but for now, we're just going to leave it nice and simple. So first off, we want to do a foreign key to a user. So I'm going to have to import something else, which is the settings module. So it's django.conf import settings. And this is mod. So we'll put user being to a foreign key. And it's going to be settings.auth user, all capitalized, auth user model. And then we're going to have to add in a related name. And we'll say match user A. And then for user B, we'll just put match user B. All right, so these are the same. And notice these are required, so it has to have both of those. Match decimal is going to be models.decimal field. Also required. Questions answered, models.integer field. And we're going to say the default is 0 for that one. And then timestamps is going to be models.datetime field. Auto now add equals to true. Auto now equals to false. So remember, when it's added into the database, this is going to be set, not when it's updated because of auto now false. So if I reverse these, then what's going to happen is whenever it's saved in the database, it will update the most recent updated one. And then finally, we want to do our Unicode. And of course, if you're on Python 3, you would do string instead. And here we're going to return self dot. I'm going to do the match decimal. So it's the decimal field here. All right, so let's go ahead and add this into the database. First of all, I want to make sure that I add matches, the app, into our settings. So let's go into our settings file, into local, and right above newsletter, I'm going to add matches. All right, so now we do python manage.py, make migrations. It gives me an error. So this is something else that's really nice about Django, is it will give you errors when you don't have the fields that have to be defined in your models. So what we see here is it's saying matches. So matches is the app, and then it's saying the model, which is match, and then the actual field that is failing. And it's saying decimal fields must define decimal places. So if we go back in here into decimal field, we'll say decimal places, and I'm going to give it up to 8 decimal places. You could leave it at 2, but I just want to make sure that it's extra accurate. Now, the way we returned it was we returned it like this. So we actually formatted it later into a match percentage, but we're going to actually return it as 8 decimal places. And then the next thing, the other error that we have, is max digits. So the max number of digits that we can have in here. And I'm going to say 16. It's probably rather high. It probably doesn't need to be that big, but I'm just going to leave it as match of 16. And then I'm also going to set a default here of 0.000. So that's going to be the default value for that match decimal. Because again, if they don't have any questions answered, their matches is going to be 0. So then another thing that we could do or think about is whether or not we want to have, let's say, a good match. So is it a good match? And then also maybe you want to say, what is the percentage? So instead of just the decimal, what's the percentage value? And that's probably all we need to really think about at this point. All right, so let's go back in and we'll do make migrations. And then finally, I will migrate this. There we go. So now it's in the database and it's pretty much ready to go. So there's a few things that we're going to have to worry about when it comes to doing this stuff. And one of those things is how we are actually going to set this, right? So user A and user B are going to be different, right? It's not always going to be the same user. So to do this, we want to use what's called a model manager. So in the next one, we'll actually discuss model managers and use them and implement them into this model itself. So if you have any questions on this, let us know. Otherwise, let's keep going.